The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a frantic drumbeat against the symphony of Chloe's agony. Each contraction was a wave of fire, pulling a scream from her raw throat. She gripped the hospital bed rails, her knuckles white, her world narrowed to this single searing point of pain. But the next wave that crashed over her wasn't a contraction. It was the sound of the door opening, and the sight of her husband Marcus standing there, not with a comforting smile, but with a manila envelope. He didn't meet her pained gaze. He simply placed it on her bedside table, its sharp corners a stark contrast to the softened edges of a world about to welcome a new life. "My lawyer will be in touch," he said, his voice as sterile as the room. It was an envelope filled with divorce papers. The story of Chloe Bennet and Marcus Thorne had once been a fairy tale, or so the society pages had breathlessly reported. He was the scion of the Thorne dynasty, a family whose name was etched in gold on university halls and museum wings, their wealth as old and deep as the bedrock of the city. Marcus was impossibly handsome, with a charming smile that seemed to crinkle the very air around him, and a confidence that came from a lifetime of never being told no. Chloe, by contrast, was a pediatric nurse. She was bright, compassionate, and carried a warmth that drew people to her. She didn't have a trust fund or a storied last name. Her currency was empathy. Her legacy was the children she helped heal. They met at a hospital charity gala, an event Marcus was obligated to attend, and Chloe was working. He'd been smitten by her genuine laughter, a sound as rare as an uncut diamond in his world of polite, calculated mirth. Their courtship was a whirlwind romance lifted from a movie screen. Helicopter rides to private picnics, surprise trips to Paris, front row seats to everything. Chloe at first was dizzy with it all. Marcus seemed to adore her, celebrating her quiet strength and her grounding presence. He called her his anchor in a world of frivolous tides. The first cracks in the gilded facade appeared when she met his family. The Thorne matriarch, Genevieve Thorne, was a woman carved from ice, her elegance matched only by her thinly veiled condescension. She looked at Chloe's department store dress as if it were a contagion. A nurse Genevieve had mused during their first tense dinner at the Thorne estate, a sprawling mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. How noble. It must be very rewarding to deal with all those sick children. The emphasis was subtle, but the meaning was clear. You belong in the service corridors, not at the dining table. Marcus's father, Richard Thorne, was a more distant figure, a man who seemed to communicate primarily through disappointed sighs and glances at his antique pocket watch. But it was Genevieve who wielded the true power in the family, and she made it clear Chloe was not and would never be worthy of the Thorne name. Despite the family's Arctic reception, Marcus was resolute. "I love you, Chloe, not them." He would insist, holding her close in their sleek, minimalist penthouse overlooking the city. "You're real. They've forgotten what that means." And Chloe believed him. She loved the man he was when they were alone, the man who would kick off his $1,000 shoes and eat pizza on the floor with her, who would listen intently as she spoke about her day. His brow furrowed with genuine concern for a sick toddler he'd never met. So they married. It was a lavish affair, of course, but one where Chloe felt like a prop in the Thorne family's grand production. Genevieve had overseen every detail, ensuring the guest list was a who's who of finance and industry, while Chloe's own small family and handful of friends looked on from the back pews, visibly uncomfortable. The first year of marriage was a delicate balancing act. Chloe tried to fit in, attending sterile cocktail parties and charity auctions, where the chatter was all about stock portfolios and summering in the Hamptons. She felt like an actress playing a part she hadn't properly rehearsed. The only time she felt truly herself was at the hospital or at home with Marcus. Then she got pregnant. Initially, Marcus was ecstatic. The news seemed to thaw him to bring back the easy-going, loving man she had first fallen for. He held her, his eyes shining with tears, and whispered promises of being the best father, of building a real family, with her one filled with love, not obligation. For a few blissful months, the Thorne family chill seemed to recede. Even Genevieve offered a smile that almost reached her eyes, though she immediately began planning the nursery with an interior designer who specialized in dynastic aesthetics. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. It started with the arrival of Isabelle Dubois. Isabelle was everything Chloe was not. She was a childhood friend of Marcus's, the daughter of a French banking tycoon, and she moved with the effortless grace of someone who had been bred for this world. She was sharp-witty and shared 1,000 inside jokes with Marcus that left Chloe feeling like an outsider in her own home. Isabelle started appearing everywhere. She'd drop by the penthouse unannounced to return something to Marcus. She'd be at the same restaurants, the same galleries. Genevieve, of course, welcomed Isabelle with open arms, often inviting her for lunch and pointedly excluding Chloe. "Marcus and Isabelle have such a history," Genevieve would say to Chloe, a saccharine smile on her face. "They understand each other on a level that, well, it's just different when you share a background." Then the seeds of doubt began to be sown. Marcus would come home late from client dinners that Chloe would later find out included Isabelle. A comment here, a suggestion there. "It's a shame you're so tired all the time with the pregnancy, darling," Isabelle said one afternoon, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "Marcus has been dying to go sailing, but he feels he can't leave you." The most insidious poison came directly from Genevieve. She began to question Chloe's fidelity subtly at first. Chloe had maintained a close friendship with a former colleague, a kind pediatrician named Dr. Liam Henderson. They'd occasionally have lunch to catch up, a completely innocent and platonic habit. One day, Marcus came home in a fury, throwing a set of photographs onto the marble coffee table. They showed Chloe and Liam laughing together at an outdoor cafe. They were grainy, long-lens shots, clearly taken by a private investigator. "What is this?" Chloe Marcus demanded, his voice cold. It's lunch with Liam." "You know Liam?" "Do I? It looks awfully friendly. People are talking. My mother is concerned. Your mother is orchestrating this." "Can't you see?" Chloe cried, her hands flying to her swelling belly. The stress was becoming unbearable. "Orchestrating what?" "The truth," he shot back. "You came from nothing, Chloe. Is this what you do? Marry a wealthy man and then carry on with your old life behind his back?" The accusation was so vile, so far from the truth, it stole her breath. From that day on, a wall of ice grew between them. Marcus became a stranger in their home. He was distant, suspicious, and cruel. He spoke to her only when necessary. His words clipped and devoid of any warmth. He moved into a guest bedroom, claiming her tossing and turning disturbed his sleep. Chloe was devastated and deeply, terrifyingly alone. Her friends were worried, especially her best friend, Sarah Jenkins, a sharp-witted lawyer who had disliked the Thornes from day one. "You need to protect yourself, Chloe." Sarah had warned her over the phone, her voice tight with anger. "These people are not playing fair. They will try to ruin you and take that baby." Chloe's pregnancy was difficult. The stress brought on high blood pressure, forcing her to take an early maternity leave. Confined to the silent, opulent penthouse, she felt like a prisoner. Marcus was rarely there, and when he was, his presence was a heavy, suffocating weight. She knew with a sickening certainty that he was spending his time with Isabel. The doubt about the baby's paternity became an unspoken monster in the room. He never said the words, but he would look at her pregnant form with a look of pure contempt. Chloe, a nurse, knew about options. She knew about prenatal paternity tests. With her world crumbling and her husband turning into a monster, she realized she had to fight back, not with his weapons of cruelty and insinuation, but with the one thing he and his family couldn't manipulate: scientific fact. It was a heartbreaking decision. The idea of having to prove her own child's legitimacy to its father was a profound violation. But Sarah's words echoed in her mind. Protect yourself. Using a lab that Sarah vetted for its discretion and ironclad reputation, Chloe arranged for the test. It required a blood sample from her and a subtle sample from Marcus. A few stray hairs from his brush left behind in the master bathroom he no longer shared with her were enough. While she was at it, prompted by her nurse's instinct for thoroughness and a flicker of something she couldn't yet name a premonition. Perhaps she paid extra for a full comparative genetic panel, ostensibly to screen for hereditary conditions. It felt like a small act of defiance, of taking back some control. The results arrived in a sealed digital file a week before her due date. She printed them out, her hands shaking as she placed them in 2 separate envelopes. The first contained the simple definitive paternity results. The second contained the full, complex genetic sequence report. She tucked them away, praying she would never have to use them. Her water broke on a Tuesday morning. The pains started almost immediately, sharp and fierce. She called Marcus. He didn't answer. She called again. Voicemail. With tears of pain and abandonment streaming down her face, she called for a car service to take her to the hospital, her overnight bag in one hand, her purse containing 2 sealed envelopes in the other. Hours later, deep in the throes of agonizing labor, the door to her private room swung open. It was Marcus. For a wild, hopeful second, her heart leaped. He had come. But then she saw his face, a mask of cold indifference, and the manila envelope in his hand. He wasn't there to hold her hand. He was there to sever their life together at the most vulnerable moment of her existence. He placed the divorce papers on her nightstand, the crisp paper, a symbol of his final, brutal judgment. "My lawyer will be in touch," he said. The pain of the next contraction was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. But as the agony crested, something else rose within her, a cold, hard resolve. He wanted a war. He had no idea what a battle she was prepared to fight. The sterile white room became a battleground. On one side, Chloe panting and sweating her body, consumed by the primal, all-encompassing work of bringing a child into the world. On the other, Marcus standing rigid and aloof, the architect of a uniquely cruel moment in time. The divorce papers sat between them, a declaration of war. "Get out!" Chloe gasped the words torn from her between contractions. "Not until you understand the terms," Marcus said, his voice unwavering. He gestured to the envelope. "It's a clean break. I'll be generous provided you don't contest it. You sign the papers, admit the circumstances, and you can walk away with a comfortable settlement. Admit the circumstances." She echoed, her voice rising with incredulous fury. "You mean admit to your disgusting, baseless lies?" while I am in labor with your child. A flicker of something doubt-guilt crossed his face for a nanosecond before it was replaced by a hardened mask. Don't make this more difficult, Chloe. I have proof. Proof, she laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You have photographs doctored by your mother's private eye and a head full of poison whispered by her and your little friend Isabel. That's not proof, Marcus. That's pathetic. A nurse bustled in, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Mr. Thorne, perhaps this isn't the best time. It's the perfect time, Marcus snapped, not taking his eyes off Chloe. Before she can use that child to lay any claim to my family's estate. The words were a physical blow. He didn't see a baby there, son. He saw a financial liability, a weapon she might wield. The last vestiges of Chloe's love for him shriveled and died in that moment, replaced by a glacial calm. The labor intensified, and the drama was forced into a temporary ceasefire. Marcus was shunted out of the room by the medical team, and Chloe was left to face the final grueling stage of childbirth alone. Through the haze of pain, she thought of the envelopes in her purse. Her plan had been a defensive one, a shield. Now it felt like a sword. Hours later, a new sound filled the room, overriding the beeping monitors and the panted breaths, the lusty, angry cry of a newborn baby. Oliver Benjamin Thorne was born at 3:14 a.m., weighing 7 pounds 8 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and his father's stormy grey eyes. As they laid the crying, squirming infant on her chest, Chloe wept. Tears of joy, of relief, of profound, earth-shattering love, and of deep, sorrowful anger. She looked down at her son's perfect face, and her resolve hardened into diamond. Later that morning, after Chloe had rested, Marcus returned. He stood awkwardly by the door, his expensive suit looking out of place amidst the new parent clutter. He didn't look at the bassinet, where Oliver slept peacefully. His focus was solely on her. "Have you had a chance to look over the papers?" he asked, his tone more like a business associate than a new father. Chloe slowly, deliberately reached for her purse on the bedside table. She ignored the divorce papers he had brought. Instead, she pulled out a crisp white envelope of her own. She held it out to him. "What's this?" he asked, suspicious. "This," Chloe said, her voice steady and clear, "is for you. You talk about proof. Well, here it is. The truth, Marcus. Not the fiction your mother has been feeding you. Open it." He took the envelope hesitantly. He tore it open, his movements stiff. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He unfolded it. It was a lab report, header and all. He scanned the technical jargon, his brow furrowed until his eyes landed on the final simple summary at the bottom. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The silence in the room was absolute. The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked from the paper to Chloe. Then his gaze, for the very first time, darted to the bassinet beside her bed. He swallowed hard, his composure finally cracking. How he whispered. "When? A few weeks ago. I knew what you were all planning. I knew you'd try to claim he wasn't yours to justify throwing us away." Chloe said, her voice devoid of emotion. "I took hair from your brush. It's a legal, admissible prenatal paternity test from the most reputable genetics lab in the country. Your son, Marcus. Unequivocally." He sank into the visitor's chair, the paper trembling in his hand. He looked utterly lost, a man whose entire reality had been upended. The certainty and arrogance that had defined him were gone, replaced by a gaping void of confusion. My mother. She was so sure, he stammered. The photos, the late nights, your mother was desperate. To get rid of me, Chloe stated flatly, and Isabel was happy to help her. They played you like a fiddle, Marcus, and you let them. You chose to believe them over the woman you claimed to love, the woman carrying your child. He couldn't speak. He just stared at the report, then at his son, then back at the report. The foundation of his righteous anger had been pulverized. He wasn't the wronged husband. He was the gullible fool. He was the villain who had served his wife divorce papers while she was in labor. Just then, the door opened again. This time, it was Genevieve Thorne, followed closely by Isabelle Dubois. Genevieve was carrying an ostentatiously large bouquet of white roses, a victor's offering. Isabel wore a smug, sympathetic smile. Darling Genevieve began, her voice gliding through the room. We came as soon as we heard. I'm so sorry you had to go through this alone, but some things, well, they simply had to be done. She stopped short when she saw her son's face. He was ashen, holding a piece of paper like it was a death sentence. Marcus, what is it? She asked, her tone sharpening. Marcus didn't answer. He simply handed her the DNA report. Genevieve snatched it from him. Her eyes flew across the page, her perfectly made-up face contorting into a mask of disbelief, then rage. This is a fake, she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. She forged this. Don't be a fool, Marcus. This woman is a conniving, social climbing charlatan. Isabel peered over Genevieve's shoulder, her own confident smirk faltering. She's right, Marcus. It's impossible. We know what she's been up to. They turned on Chloe, a united front of wealth and privilege, ready to crush her with the sheer force of their conviction. They saw her as a cornered animal, easy to finish off. Marcus looked from his mother's furious face to Chloe's calm, steady gaze. He was trapped between the lie he had been fed and the truth he now held in his hand. The family pressure, the years of indoctrination was immense. He started to waver. It could be a forgery, he mumbled, looking at Chloe, a desperate plea in his eyes, for it all to be a lie, so his world could snap back into place. Chloe held his gaze, the last spark of pity she felt for him extinguished. He was weak. Even with irrefutable proof, he was still looking for an escape, still beholden to his mother's will. A forgery, Chloe said, her voice dangerously quiet. You think I, a nurse, have the resources to forge a document from a leading national genetics lab and fool you, the great Marcus Thorne? You think they would risk their reputation for me? She paused, letting the silence hang heavy. You're right to question it, though. A simple paternity test can be argued, I suppose. It's a good thing I didn't just get a paternity test. She reached back into her purse and pulled out the second, thicker envelope. It landed on the bedspread with a soft but definitive thud. You see, Genevieve? Chloe said, her eyes locking onto the older woman's. I had a feeling you would pull a stunt like this. So I took precautions. I ran a full genetic panel. On me, on the baby. And on Marcus. A new kind of fear, cold and sharp, flickered in Genevieve's eyes. This was unexpected. This was off script. And Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Chloe gave him a sad, lingering look. And it changed everything. Not just for me, but for you, Marcus. For all of you. Go on, she said, her voice dropping, laced with an intensity that sent a chill through the room. Open it, and discover what the Thorne family legacy is really built on. The air in the hospital room, already heavy with the scent of antiseptic and the raw emotion of the last hour, grew thick with a new and volatile tension. The single sheet of paper in Marcus's hand, the paternity report, was a white flag of truth in a war of whispers and lies. But war is not so easily ended. The door swung open with a soft click, and Genevieve Thorne swept in, a vision of icy Chanel and feigned concern. Close behind her, like a hand-picked lady-in-waiting, was Isabelle Dubois, her expression a carefully curated mask of sympathy. Genevieve carried an ostentatiously large bouquet of white lilies, their funereal scent mingling unpleasantly with the smell of the room. "Darling," Genevieve began, her voice a silken glide that cut through the silence. "We came the moment we heard the news. I am so deeply sorry you had to endure this ordeal alone, but some matters as painful as they are simply had to be addressed head-on." Her eyes flickered towards the bassinet with distaste before settling on Chloe, the implication clear. "The unpleasantness is over. Now you will be dealt with." Her victory lap came to an abrupt halt as she registered her son's appearance. Marcus was not standing tall and triumphant. He was slumped in the visitor's chair, his face the color of ash, staring at the paper in his trembling hand, as if it were a venomous snake. "Marcus, what on earth is wrong with you?" Genevieve's tone sharpened, the silk hardening to steel. "You look as though you've seen a ghost." Marcus didn't reply. He seemed incapable of speech, his mind locked in a feedback loop of denial and dawning horror. With a shaky hand, he held the DNA report out to his mother. Genevieve snatched it from him with an impatient sigh. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows arched as she began to read. The confident smirk on her face faltered, then contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "This is absurd," she hissed, the paper crinkling in her clenched fist. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper intended to intimidate and dominate. "This is a forgery, a desperate, pathetic trick from a desperate, pathetic woman. Don't be a fool, Marcus. I warned you from the very beginning what she was. A conniving, social-climbing charlatan who would do anything to sink her claws into our family." Isabel leaned over Genevieve's shoulder, her brow furrowed in a performance of deep concern. "She's right, Marcus," Isabel murmured, her voice laced with poison. "Think about it. The timing is so convenient. It's impossible. We know what she's been doing, who she's been seeing. You saw the photographs yourself. This is just one more lie." They turned on Chloe in unison, a formidable two-woman firing squad of wealth and privilege, fully expecting her to crumble under their united assault. They had done this before, Chloe realized, to others who had stood in their way. This was how they won. And for a terrifying moment, it seemed to be working. Marcus looked from his mother's furious, convinced face to Chloe's calm, waiting one. He was a man being pulled apart. On one side was the irrefutable scientific proof in his hand. On the other was a lifetime of psychological conditioning, a deep-seated need for his mother's approval that had been the guiding principle of his entire existence. The weight of that lifetime was immense. It could be a forgery. He mumbled the words, tasting like ash in his mouth. He looked at Chloe not with accusation anymore, but with a desperate, pleading expression, begging her to confess to a lie so that his shattered world could snap back into its familiar, comfortable shape. Chloe looked at him, at this weak, vacillating man, who even when faced with the truth was still searching for the more convenient lie. The last embers of pity she felt for him went cold. He was not just a fool, he was a willing one. A forgery. Chloe's voice was dangerously quiet, yet it commanded the attention of the entire room. Let me see if I understand you, Genevieve. You believe that I, a pediatric nurse, have the sophisticated connections and financial resources to bribe a multi-million-dollar national genetics laboratory, a lab, I might add, frequently used by law enforcement for its unimpeachable reputation, to fabricate a legal document and risk federal prosecution and the complete ruin of their business. She let the question hang in the air. All for me. You give me far too much credit. She held Marcus's wavering gaze. But you're right to want more than a simple piece of paper. After all, your family doesn't deal in simple truths, do you? You deal in narratives, in manufactured realities. With a slow, deliberate movement that felt weighted with theatrical gravity, Chloe reached into her purse on the bedside table. Her fingers closed around the second, much thicker envelope. She pulled it out and let it drop onto the pristine white of the bedspread. It landed with a soft but definitive thud that echoed the final nail being hammered into a coffin. You see, she said, her eyes shifting to lock onto Genevieve, whose face had suddenly gone rigid with a new unfamiliar emotion. Fear. I had a premonition. I knew that proving paternity wouldn't be enough for you. I knew you would attack the results, the lab, my character. You're predictable. So I took precautions. She gestured to the envelope. That is not just a paternity test. It's a full, comprehensive genetic panel. I had them run it on myself, on Oliver, and on Marcus, ostensibly to screen for hereditary diseases. I wanted to be thorough. What is the meaning of this? Genevieve demanded, but the imperious command was gone from her voice, replaced by a thin, reedy tremor. The meaning, Chloe said, her voice as calm and sterile as the room around them, is that we are about to have a lesson in genetics. Please, Marcus, open it. The truth you're so afraid of is in there, all of it. With a sense of impending doom, Marcus picked up the heavy envelope. He tore it open, his fingers clumsy, and pulled out a thick sheaf of papers. They were dense with charts, sequences, and technical jargon that meant nothing to him. He flipped through the pages, a frantic, desperate search for meaning in the scientific script. I don't understand any of this, he said, his voice raw with frustration. It's just data. Then allow me to guide you, Chloe said, her tone clinical and precise. Turn to page 27, section C, comparative analysis of Y chromosome alleles. I've heard you and your father speak at length about your lineage. The great unbroken bloodline of the Thorn men. She looked pointedly at Marcus. You once boasted to me about it, remember, at a dinner party. You told me a university study had confirmed that your paternal line carries a rare and specific genetic marker, a haplotype found almost exclusively in your family. You called it the Thorn legacy marker, a biological crest proving your pure ancestry, a source of immense pride, you said. Marcus paled the memory of that arrogant boast, now feeling like a millstone around his neck. Yes, the marker. Precisely, Chloe affirmed. Now look at the analysis on that page. Find the results for our son, Oliver Benjamin Thorn. With trembling hands, Marcus found the page, his eyes scanning the columns of data. He found Oliver's name. He traced the line with his finger, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He stopped at the column labeled Thorn marker, haplogroup, M269TH7. In the box next to his son's name was a single definitive word: present. He has it. Marcus breathed a wave of dizzying emotion washing over him. Shame, relief, awe. The legacy marker. It's there. He really is. His voice broke. The child he had reviled, the baby he had refused to even look at, carried the ultimate biological proof of his heritage. A tight, triumphant laugh escaped Genevieve's lips. She snatched the page from Marcus's hand to see for herself. The relief on her face was palpable. She saw it as a complete vindication of her bloodline, if not her methods. Well then, she declared, her voice ringing with renewed authority, as she threw a condescending look at Chloe. It seems this entire sordid and frankly embarrassing episode is concluded. You've made your point, Chloe. Your child will be provided for. Now we can finally discuss the terms of your departure with the civility you should have shown from the beginning. Chloe watched her, a small, sad smile touching her lips. She turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting Marcus's. "We're not finished, Genevieve," she said softly, before her gaze hardened. "Look again, Marcus. Look at the data line directly above Oliver's." A cold dread trickled down Marcus's spine. With a sense of premonition, he took the page back from his mother and looked. There it was, his own name. Marcus Thorne. His eyes followed the line to the same column, to the box that should have contained the same result. But it didn't. Instead, a different word was printed in stark black capital letters. Absent. The world tilted on its axis. The word pulsed on the page, devoid of meaning, yet screaming with it. Absent. Absent. It was an impossibility. A paradox. "No," he whispered, shaking his head in frantic denial. "No, this is wrong. It has to be a lab error. It's a mistake." He looked up at Chloe, his face a mask of desperate, pleading confusion. "It's not a mistake," Marcus, Chloe said, her voice filled with a terrible, sorrowful finality. They confirmed all anomalous results 3 times. The report is ironclad. She rose slightly from her pillows, her voice gaining strength, becoming the voice of irrefutable reason in a room descending into madness. "Think, Marcus. Use your head. A Y chromosome marker is passed directly from a father to his son. It's a straight, unbroken line. Oliver is your son. The first report proved that. He has the Thorne legacy marker. Therefore, he could only have gotten it from you, his father." She paused, letting the inescapable logic sink in. "The only way Oliver could have the marker, and you don't," she continued, delivering the final devastating blow, "is if it was never in your genetic code to begin with. The only way that is possible is if the man you have called your father, your entire life, Richard Thorne, is not your biological father." The silence that followed was a physical thing, a crushing weight that sucked all the air out of the room. Isabel, ever the pragmatist, was the first to fully comprehend the blast radius of this revelation. Her eyes widened in horror. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was a dynastic scandal of epic proportions. The Thorne name was built on a lie. Without a backward glance, she turned her heels, clicking softly on the linoleum as she abandoned the scene. Her expression, one of pure calculated severance. Genevieve let out a strangled, guttural sound, stumbling back as if she'd been physically struck. All the color drained from her face, leaving behind a waxy, terrifying pallor. Marcus stood frozen, the papers slipping from his numb fingers and scattering across the floor. His life, his identity, his name, his pride, all of it was a lie. He wasn't the heir. He wasn't a Thorne by blood. He was the product of his mother's secret infidelity. His mother, the arch-moralist, the guardian of the family's purity, was a hypocrite of monstrous proportions. He turned to her, his movements slow and robotic, his face a horrifying blank slate. "You," he whispered, his voice a dead, hollow thing. "You preached to me about honor, about legacy, about fidelity. You tore my wife's reputation to shreds. You destroyed my marriage. You made me hate my own unborn son, all to protect this filthy lie." His voice began to rise, cracking with hysteria and grief, a terrible raw sound of a soul being ripped in two. "You made me serve her divorce papers while she was in labor. You stood by and let me do it. Knowing that my son, the baby you wanted me to disown, was more of a thorn than I ever was. Marcus, darling, please, it was complicated," Genevieve sobbed, reaching for him. "Complicated," he roared, recoiling from her touch as if from a leper. "You ruined us for what?" "To hide your affair. My father, oh God. Richard, he's lived a lie. My entire life has been a lie." He staggered backward, clutching his head. His eyes wild and unfocused. He looked at the divorce papers, at the scattered DNA report, at his innocent son, sleeping peacefully through the destruction of his family. He looked at Chloe, and in her sad, steady gaze, he saw the full, horrifying depth of his own cruelty and weakness. The room was closing in, the walls pulsating. He couldn't breathe. With a final agonized cry, he turned and fled, bursting through the door and running blindly down the hospital corridor, a man running from a life that had just been revealed as a complete and utter fraud. Chloe watched him go, feeling no victory, only a vast, aching emptiness. She looked at Genevieve, who had crumpled into the visitor's chair, her body racked with pathetic, gulping sobs, a queen dethroned in a sterile hospital room. Then she looked down at Oliver, who stirred and let out a soft sigh. His tiny fists curled against his chest. He was the truth. His simple existence had unraveled it all. Chloe gently picked him up, holding him close to her heart, inhaling the sweet, innocent scent of new life. The war was over, but she was standing alone on the battlefield, surrounded by the ruins. The weeks that followed the cataclysm in the hospital room were not filled with the triumphant trumpet calls of victory, but with a strange and profound quiet. The Thorne family, a name that had once dominated headlines and commanded respect, did not erupt in a public scandal. Instead, it imploded, collapsing inward like a dying star. The fallout was not a fiery spectacle, but a cloud of radioactive silence. Chloe learned of the details in hushed tones from her best friend, and now full-time legal counsel, Sarah Jenkins, who had an uncanny network for gathering intelligence from the city's elite. "It's incredible," Sarah said one afternoon, bouncing a cooing Oliver on her knee as Chloe made coffee in the sun-drenched kitchen of the penthouse. "They're in complete lockdown. Genevieve hasn't been seen outside the mansion since that day. The official story is she's unwell, but the real story is she's a pariah. No one is taking her calls. The Queen has been deposed." "And Richard?" Chloe asked, her voice soft. The thought of the quiet, dignified man who had been dealt the deepest betrayal still caused her a pang of sympathy. "He's the talk of the town, in a way," Sarah explained, her voice dropping. "He didn't make a scene. He didn't issue a statement. One afternoon, his driver pulled up to the mansion, loaded 2 suitcases into the car, and drove him to a suite at the Four Seasons, where he's been living ever since. He filed for divorce the next day. The quiet dignity of it all has made him a martyr in their social circle and turned Genevieve into an absolute villain. He's systematically dismantling their shared life, piece by piece, with the cold precision of a surgeon. The divorce proceedings that Marcus had initiated with such viciousness were now a mere footnote. His legal team, once aggressive and intimidating, became deferential, almost apologetic. Every communication was a concession. There were no negotiations. There was only capitulation. Chloe, guided by Sarah's sharp legal mind, navigated the process not with vengeful glee, but with the sober finality of a woman securing her child's future. She wasn't punishing Marcus. She was protecting Oliver. She formally took ownership of the penthouse, a space she was slowly but surely exorcising of its cold, painful memories. The stark white walls were repainted in warm, soft tones of cream and sage green. The minimalist, uncomfortable furniture that looked like it belonged in a modern art museum was sold off and replaced with plush sofas, soft rugs and bookshelves filled with novels and children's stories. The silent, sterile rooms were now filled with the sound of wind chimes on the balcony, the scent of lavender and baby powder, and most importantly, the happy gurgling sounds of her son. Her mother and sister visited often, their boisterous, loving energy filling the apartment with a warmth it had never known. The gilded cage had become a home. Marcus, in this new world, was a ghost. He adhered to the legal agreements perfectly, but seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. He had severed all contact with Genevieve and what remained of the Thorn apparatus. The only signs of his existence were the deliveries that would arrive periodically. They were extravagant, almost absurdly so. A sterling silver rattle from Tiffany's that was too heavy for a baby to hold. A stroller system that cost more than a small car. A miniature tuxedo from a Parisian designer for his 3-month-old son. Each gift brought a fresh wave of sadness. Chloe would unbox them, look at the expensive impersonal objects, and see them for what they were. The desperate gestures of a man who had no idea how to connect. He was trying to offer his son the only thing he had ever known, money, when all Oliver needed was a father. She packed each gift away in a storage closet, a growing museum of Marcus's profound emotional disconnect. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, almost exactly 3 months after Oliver's birth, a letter arrived. It was not sent from a law office or a courier service. It was a simple cream-colored envelope addressed to her in handwriting that was at once familiar and foreign. The bold, arrogant slash of Marcus's old signature was gone, replaced by a smaller, more contained script. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she carefully opened it. Chloe, it began. I am writing this letter for the 10th time, and I suspect it will still not be right. There are no words in the English language that can adequately express the depth of my regret, or the shame I feel when I think of what I did to you. I have spent every day of the last 3 months replaying that scene in the hospital. The man who stood there so cold and cruel feels like a stranger to me now, but I know he was me. I was a coward, a fool and a monster, and I will carry the weight of that truth for the rest of my life. I didn't just break your trust. I tried to shatter your spirit. I abandoned you, and I rejected my own son at the moment of his birth. It is a sin for which I can imagine no redemption. I have been in therapy twice a week. My therapist says I have to understand the why. For 35 years, I lived in a psychological prison built by my mother. The Thorn name, the legacy, the bloodline, it was my religion. The pressure to be the perfect heir was absolute, and it hollowed me out. It made me weak, paranoid, and so desperate for my mother's approval that I allowed her to pour poison directly into my ear. I chose her lies over your love because, in a twisted way, her world was the only one I knew how to exist in. Finding out that the entire foundation of that world was a lie, it didn't excuse my actions, but it did for the first time allow me to see the bars of the cage I was in. I have met with Richard. I will never call him that to his face. He will always be my father. The conversations are the hardest things I have ever done. He looks at me with such a mixture of love and profound pain. He is a good man, Chloe. A better man than I ever knew. He was betrayed just as deeply as we were. He is trying to build a new life, and I am trying to figure out if I have a place in it. As for my mother, I have not spoken to her since that day. She has tried to reach me, but I cannot. I asked her through lawyers for the name of my biological father. She refused. She said it was a secret she would take to her grave to protect an old family. Perhaps it is a mercy. I am a man without a name, a son with two fathers, and yet none at all. I am untethered. I tell you all of this not to garner sympathy or to burden you with my problems. I tell you this so you understand that I am trying, truly trying to dismantle the man I was and build someone new from the rubble. I am writing to you for one reason, not to ask for your forgiveness. I know I have no right to it, and I may never earn it. I am asking for a chance, however small, however far in the future, to earn the forgiveness of my son. I want to be his father, not a name on a trust fund, not a sender of expensive gifts, but a real present loving father. I will do anything. I will wait any amount of time. I will follow any rule you set. I just need to know if that door is not permanently bolted shut. Yours, Marcus. Chloe folded the letter, her tears staining the cream paper. She laid it on the kitchen counter and looked out the window at the sprawling city below. It was the letter of a broken man, but within that brokenness, she saw the first flicker of genuine strength. She wrestled with the letter for a full week. She would read it, put it away, then take it out and read it again. Her head and heart were at war. Her mind screamed with self-preservation, reminding her of the pain, the humiliation, the sheer cruelty. He is a risk, the voice of reason said. Your life is peaceful now. Oliver is safe. Why would you let the storm back in? But her heart felt a different pull. It was not love for Marcus. That feeling had been excised with surgical precision in the hospital room. It was a deeper, more complex empathy. She saw a man who had also been a victim of Genevieve's lies, albeit in a different way. And most importantly, she saw her son Oliver, a beautiful, innocent boy, who was half Marcus. Did he not deserve the chance to know that half of himself, if it could be remade into something good? You're actually considering it, Sarah asked one evening, her skepticism obvious. Chloe, he's toxic. His entire family is a black hole. You and Ollie are finally free. I know, Chloe said, staring into her teacup. But is it freedom if Oliver grows up with a father-shaped hole in his life? Is it fair to him if his father is genuinely trying to change, and I deny him that relationship out of my own anger? It's not anger, it's self-protection, Sarah insisted, though her voice softened. I just don't want to see you get hurt again. I won't, Chloe said, a newfound certainty in her voice. I'm not the same person he left in that hospital room. I won't let him hurt me or Oliver. But I have to know if this change is real. She finally agreed to meet him. Her reply, a short formal email suggesting a public park on a neutral side of town. He was there early, standing under a large oak tree whose leaves were turning brilliant shades of orange and red. The change in him was startling. It wasn't just the clothes, simple jeans and a grey wool sweater instead of a tailored suit. It was his entire being. The easy, predatory confidence was gone. He stood awkwardly, his shoulders slightly stooped, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he looked like he hadn't had a peaceful night's sleep in months. He watched her approach, his eyes fixed not on her, but on the stroller. He didn't move until she stopped a safe 10 feet away. "Chloe, thank you for coming," he said, his voice quiet, almost hoarse. "I came for Oliver." She stated her tone clear and unambiguous. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a briefing. They stood in silence for a long moment. He took a hesitant step closer, his gaze finally lifting to meet hers, before dropping to the sleeping baby. A look of profound, aching longing crossed his face. "He's beautiful," he whispered. "He is," she agreed. "Now let's be very clear, Marcus. You and I are over. The life we had, the love I thought we had, is gone. You destroyed it. There is no coming back from that. Do you understand?" He flinched as if struck, but nodded, his eyes closing briefly. "I understand. I never expected. I don't deserve that." "Good," she continued, her voice steady. "But Oliver is a separate matter. He deserves to know his father. And you, if you are truly serious about this, deserve a chance to be his father." Hope flickered in his eyes, fragile and raw. "I am. I swear it." "Then here are the terms," she said, laying them out with the dispassionate clarity of a doctor giving a prescription. "For the first 6 months, all visits will be supervised. By me. They will be short, and they will be in public places. You will continue your therapy, and I will require confirmation of it from your therapist. You will never, ever speak ill of me or our past to him. And under no circumstances is Genevieve or anyone associated with her to have any contact with my son. One misstep, Marcus. One hint of the old you. One sign that you are not putting his well-being first, and this door doesn't just close, it gets sealed in concrete. Am I clear?" He looked at her, his eyes swimming with unshed tears, and nodded without a single shred of hesitation. "Crystal clear. Chloe. Thank you. It's more than I deserve." As she prepared to turn the stroller and leave, he spoke one last time, his voice choked with emotion. "Why? After everything I did? Why would you give me this chance?" Chloe paused and looked down at her sleeping son's perfect face, then back at the broken man standing before her. "A few months ago I would have said it was only for Oliver." She began, her voice softening with a new wisdom. "But it's more than that now. I've learned that your mother's poison didn't just hurt me. It trickled down through generations. It hurt your father, it twisted you, and it threatened to poison my son's future. The only way to stop a cycle of pain is for someone to be brave enough to choose a different path." She looked him directly in the eye. "I'm giving you this chance because my son is half you, and I need to believe that part of him comes from a man who is capable of goodness and redemption. And I'm doing it for me because I refuse to let anger be the legacy of what you did. Real strength isn't about revenge, Marcus. It's about having the power to destroy someone and choosing instead to let them rebuild." With that, she turned and pushed the stroller along the sun-dappled path. The air felt clean and crisp. She didn't look back. She was walking away from the ashes of her past, her gaze fixed firmly on the horizon, where a new life, a real life, forged in fire and built on truth, was just beginning. Chloe's story isn't just about the drama of a marriage falling apart. It's a powerful testament to a woman's incredible strength in the face of unimaginable betrayal. It shows us that truth, even when it's painful and destructive, is the only foundation upon which a real life can be built. She was pushed to her absolute limit, yet she found the courage not only to fight back, but to emerge from the wreckage with her integrity and compassion intact. She took control of her own narrative, and in doing so wrote the future for herself and her son. What would you have done in Chloe's position? Could you have found it in your heart to give Marcus a chance to be a father? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of resilience and empowerment moved you, please give this video a like. Share it with someone who appreciates a powerful story. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you for listening.